Right, lads, there were plenty of winners and there were plenty of losers. But Toby, I'll come to you first. Give me your first winner.
So my first winner is a people's favourite, and it's Kevin Magnussen. I think you cannot fault anything he's done this weekend at all. He came in not really knowing what was going on, only had 2 days of testing, like minimal time, then came into this weekend, got into Q3, and now has finished P5 today and scored 10 points for Haas. And the big thing that stands out for me is when you look at the constructors table at the moment, Haas are third and Red Bull are at the bottom. And I don't think anyone would have predicted that coming into this weekend. And it's all thanks to Kevin Magnussen.
Certainly nobody would have predicted that because given Haas's performance last season, they were awful. But they did put a lot of their eggs into this year because, well, they were so poor, it wasn't worth continuing where they were, was it, Cam?
No, last year Haas sort of just gave up, really. I think they've said it from the start, from the get-go in 2021, that this year was their focus, and it's paid off. They've got a quick car, which is surprising, perhaps, but given how much attention and sort of effort they've put in it, maybe not so. And yeah, Kevin Magnussen absolutely smashed it this weekend. He looked quick throughout. The Haas looked quick. Mick Schumacher just missing out on points in P11. But yeah, Magnussen, full props to him. He looked quick, and fair play to him, because I wasn't expecting that quick. I didn't expect him to get up to speed that quickly. Let's just say that after a year out.
Yeah, Magnussen looks like he's got the bit between his teeth, to be fair, and he's got a point to prove because after being dropped by Haas a year and a half ago now, he's come back and he could have easily just sort of said, I'm in a Haas. It's not the best car on the grid. I'll just do what I can. But he's clearly come back with a point to prove and he's doing brilliantly. He has been brilliant all weekend, but nobody saw this coming. So fair play to Kevin Magnussen. You're one of our winners this week. P5, that is a great result. Cam, I'll stick with you now for your first winner.
Yeah, potentially a little bit boring, but it's just Ferrari. I mean, we've got to talk about them just because of how sort of impressive. 1-2. Obviously, last season we had 1-1-2 the whole season, which is McLaren at Monza. And we've got one in the first race of this season. Ferrari absolutely smashed. They've clearly just hit the nail on the head with the regulations. They found the perfect formula. And with Red Bull struggling with reliability as they were in the first race, Ferrari have clearly taken a leap ahead. They clearly now look the best package. I mean, I wasn't expecting them to come in and put it on pole in the first race of the season. I was expecting Red Bull to do that, but Ferrari have done it. Leclerc drove an absolutely blind race, and Carlos Sainz, although he's a little bit way off his teammate, obviously pulled it back P2, can't really complain. So I think Ferrari would be absolutely delighted with how they start this season, and so they should be.
Ferrari really, really were immense. Fair play to them. It's clear, Toby, that them focusing on this season, last season, well, as it stands, it's looking like the right decision.
Yeah, I don't think you can fault them really, because they still did well last year, but obviously, like you said, they were focusing on this season more so. But I think now is their chance to really get going. You can see how well they performed today, and if next week, say Leclerc or Sainz win, and then the other gets a podium, and say Red Bull get on the podium as well, but Mercedes are a bit further back, then Mercedes and Red Bull are going to be fighting more so, and Red Bull will be able to just increase their lead. So getting a good start in the next, I'd say, 4 races. So getting as many points in the first 5 races of the season for Ferrari will be a priority in order to bridge a gap. And then they can try and hold on to that, which I think they probably could.
Yeah, one thing you do have to say is Ferrari are looking really good at the minute. How much room for growth have they got? That'll be interesting to see over the course of the first 6 weeks and the entire season as a whole, because certainly Red Bull have got a really good package, but maybe haven't got that reliability. And Mercedes, well, they've not got the package as it stands. They're struggling with the porpoising. They're struggling with the engine power. So it'll be really interesting to see whether Mercedes in particular, whether as the season goes on, they can get back into contention. And they're not far off. It probably just needs a few things to go their way and they'll be back near the top of the grid. We'll move on to losers now. Some drivers, what I noticed was some drivers had absolute shockers in particular. And there was a group of them that just were awful all weekend, off the pace, didn't look good. The cars didn't look good. So Toby, I'll start with you. Who is your first loser?
I think we can only choose Red Bull. It's not necessarily their fault, but having 3 of their 4 drivers DNF says something. And I think although they performed well all weekend, the end result is they've got only 4 points from AlphaTauri, and obviously that's not even Red Bull, it's just their sister team. So there is literally nothing gained from this weekend apart from maybe a bit of a better understanding of their car and what went wrong. So I think you really just have to look at this from a Red Bull perspective and think, all right, on to the next. This has been a poor one, but you just got to deal with it.
Cam, Red Bull, it was all right, to be fair for them, up until those last 10 laps. Then Verstappen, he has a habit, Verstappen, of saying how he has problems, and then he just sort of gets on with it, and there are no problems. But this time, seriously, obviously was an issue. Is there a bigger concern for Red Bull, or is it as small as it just a bad day?
I think we'll find out next weekend, really. I think there's not really much you can do. I mean, doing full race distance is sort of the only way you can really test the reliability of your car. And they found out that on Sunday in Bahrain, that their car perhaps wasn't as reliable as they thought. Maybe it's a circuit thing. Maybe it's just a one-off. It's just unfortunate what happened to Perez and Verstappen and Gasly. So maybe it's something that we and as the media and Red Bull themselves won't even need to worry about. But I think it will be a concern for them. They'll be looking over the data thinking what went wrong, because it looked like it could be a really, really encouraging race. And Sergio Perez even looked like he could get third at one point. So Red Bull will be frustrated, I think, that a promising situation in terms of points has materialised in absolutely nothing.
It's interesting to see the contrasting emotions from, well, the absolute delight of Red Bull winning the World Championship in Abu Dhabi to just 3 months later, absolute despair because, well, I think it sort of over the radio messages, Red Bull sounded a bit helpless, if I'm honest. It was a bit like, well, what do we do? Because we don't know what the problem, well, they knew what the problem is, but they weren't telling Max what the issue was. And then it just all went tits up, really, because 3 of their 4 drivers failed to finish. So it'll be interesting to see whether they have to sacrifice performance, but we'll wait and see. We've only got to wait 7 days because the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is coming up. Toby, you wanted to give a special mention to Williams. They're not an official loser this week, but maybe slightly underwhelming for them.
Yeah, I mentioned them briefly before we start recording, mainly because of my prediction in our first episode, where I thought that they were the losers of pre-season testing. Albon finished 13th, Latifi finished 16th. Albon looked like maybe he could get something, but that's at a push, and Latifi was just out of the race for basically the whole thing. He was at the back with McLaren the whole time, so it didn't really look good on his part. So I just think there was a bit of an expectation that maybe they would be a bit better. So that's why I'm saying, obviously Red Bull are the main losers, but in my mind, Williams were just underwhelming, and people maybe would have thought that they could have done a bit more this weekend.
One team which had a worse weekend than Williams and Red Bull is probably McLaren. Now, they were in the top 4 of teams to look out for this year in terms of that could maybe challenge for the title, but they're your big losers, Cam.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Red Bull, no points, no finishes, but McLaren was concerning. I mean, seeing McLaren right at the back of the grid is something we're not used to in recent years anyway. Yeah, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo just didn't have any race pace. Obviously, the qualifying pace wasn't there on Saturday, and it was maybe an expectation it would get slightly better in the race, but that just didn't materialise at all. And McLaren just not sure what it is from looking so good in Barcelona just to having no pace at all. They are, I mean, you look at the grid, and throughout the whole race, there was an obvious 6 drivers at the back from 3 teams. All 3 teams use a Mercedes power engine. All 3 teams use a Mercedes power unit, and it's worrying. It's concerning because Aston Martin, Williams, and McLaren looked way off the pace. They were the 6 drivers of those teams were the ones who had to unlap themselves in the safety car, and that was it. And they were clearly, there was a big divide between themselves and the rest of the grid, really. And McLaren were my losers just because of how good they were last year and what they promised for this year, really, especially in Barcelona tests. So concerning, very, very concerning for McLaren, who will need to sort of find a solution quickly, or this season could soon be over.